Hey guys, Clay here with Reality Bites. Want to take a minute to talk to you a little more about some of the goings on with EOS, Steem it, and then of course BitShares. But this time I'm going to let you guys stare at something a little prettier than myself. So hang on one second while I mount you to my dashboard. Just yesterday on one of the public, or whatever you call the chat forums, there was a little spat between Ned Scott, essentially leader of Steem, and Dan Larimer, developer of Steem, developer of BitShares, and developer of EOS. And to give you kind of a gist of what it was all about, I'm gonna link it to this Steem it article below the video. But to give you an idea, Dan published an article on Steem it about EOS and their development. Ned Scott immediately came in and downvoted the article and put one word in there, aggravation, aggravating or something like that. I don't have it in front of me. It was not a word I've ever seen before, but regardless, he downvoted Dan Larimer because the Dan Larimer is talking about EOS. And if you weren't aware, which I was not, then it just became very public that Ned Scott has a riff or a problem with Dan Larimer. And it came out a little bit through Dan Larimer's response to all of this that somehow Ned owns a decent majority of some of the Steem that was set back early on to give to new users, and Ned's not using it that way, and Dan feels like maybe Steem it's becoming too centralized around Ned, and really lashed back at Ned for his actions, and very matter-of-factly stated that he would be no longer affiliated with Steem. Y'all, this is going to be disheartening for so many people who love Steem and love Dan Larimer and his projects, to find out that Dan not only just renounced his cooperation with Steem whatsoever, but then went on to suggest that a new competitor to Steem could easily be formed on EOS, and even asked if anybody had any good names for it. So read the response from Dan Larimer to Ned Scott's downvote on the attached link for the Steem it video, because once this is going to spread quickly. I think it was a very childish move on behalf of Ned Scott to just disregard all of the Steem followers and his, childish downvote, where in actuality Dan Larimer had forgiven, commission on that article. In other words, he wasn't going to make any money on it anyway. And then Ned Scott ends up with a couple $1,000 bounty for curating this stinking thing. So you will hear more about it, but just a heads up, it looks like Dan Larimer's proceeding forward with EOS, regardless of anybody's assumptions that he's still involved with BitShares and Steem. At this point, you have to realize that he is not. And I watched a video where Dan explained that, he's a software developer and a contractor at that. So, for example, if, say one of the, international airports hired Dan to develop their software system, he would do that. And when the contract was up, Dan would move on and develop software for someone else. And the airport would be required to obviously work or to maintain the software and to operate the software. That's not Dan's job, and he's very open about that. His job is to create decentralized applications for, the decentralized web. That's what he wants to do. And he claims to be developing EOS so that he can do more of that. So BitShares was his first DAC, Decentralized Autonomous Company. It is running on its own. Steem is his second DAC. It is running on its own. However, there are several whales in the community, and that has caused some issues with a lot of people because it seems like that's too centralized for a social media platform. But with those two apps, Dan learned a lot about creating an app, a decentralized app in a decentralized platform. Where now he's releasing EOS, which is going to give anybody the ability to release a BitShares in an EOS or a Steem it or a Steem. I'm sure that didn't make Ned very happy, but Ned didn't need to respond that way. That was silly. I mean, maybe dumb, technically, to show his public, displayment of ill will towards Dan for whatever it might be. But you got to give a hats off to Dan. Dan is just doing exactly what he said he's going to do, which is develop the apps for people's life, liberty, and property, decentralized. So, his next release of EOS is going to allow him to then further develop new apps, decentralized, and have time and the system to do it on. And here he is challenging Steem, basically saying, we're going to put a new one out on Steem. What are some names that you guys can think of? And I mean, come on, that's a huge shot in the face to Steem, but at the same time, it's a compliment to Dan's work. Again, if Steem is the only social media platform, then that's in effect a little bit of a centralized platform. If there's only one place to go put your content, regardless of how decentralized Steem is. I'm a huge Steem fan, people, so don't get the wrong idea. I'm a huge Bitcoin fan because it was the trailblazer. I think Bitcoin and proof of work was the only way to get it off the ground. That is digital currencies. But now that we have delegated proof of stake, which is a lot less expensive and still extremely effective, I think Dan's onto something with his technology. And I wanted to share with you something else that's happening on the EOS platform. Just recently, about a week ago now, a startup called Everypedia. If you haven't heard of it, Everypedia. The CTO of Everypedia is the original founder for Wikipedia. So he's not happy with the way Wikipedia has gone, which we all know Wikipedia can be shady at times because we don't really know who's doing the editing and whatnot, and there's a lot of false propaganda being spread. Where Everypedia is going to be developed on the EOS platform. So they're going to be moving their delegate and proof of stake system to the EOS platform so that they can have proof of stake. And in doing so, they're going to airdrop, it's a term that's kind of new to me, but airdrop the tokens to all EOS token holders. So get this, instead of Everypedia doing an ICO on Ethereum, which has been kind of downgraded lately as being possibly illegal and violating securities acts, which is why EOS is not available in China and US. Everypedia, instead of doing an ICO to raise money, I assume at this point has partnered with EOS, maybe through some of their venture capital, that they've set up relationships with these new venture capital firms, and instead of doing an ICO to raise money, they are getting money from the venture capital firm and then creating a token they call IQ token. And the IQ token will be airdropped to all EOS token holders, meaning, think of it this way. We as EOS token holders purchased the bandwidth of the system. 100% of the system is owned by EOS token holders. That money that was given to Dan Larimer has been put into funds for venture capitalists to go out and seek developers. And as they seek and find developers, they're going to fund them with the money that was raised through EOS, which then the developers, while creating their app, will put a decentralized token together and release it to all the EOS token holders, which one gives them immediate decentralized, or the benefit of decentralized token, by spreading it to all the EOS token holders, which at this point has got by far a record amount of decentralized token holders, because it's gone on for so long, 6 months, 7 months now, and it's going to go on for another 5 or 6 months until June. EOS token holders are by far more spread out than any other token, where the IQ token of Everypedia can simply be given to them. And if they prove that they're worth something, meaning if the concept or the DApp of Everypedia is interesting and people like it, and those IQ tokens begin to rise in value, okay? Just like it should. It shouldn't be done in a single month where, you know, a DApp does an ICO, raises $20 million in, you know, the month of June, and then, you know, in the month of July, their token hits exchanges and they're off to the races. I don't know. That just, it doesn't allow a lot of time for people to get involved and to spread those tokens out. But, you know, if one person wants to jump in and buy up all those tokens, then you, in effect, have lost your decentralized structure. So, you know, it makes a lot of sense what Dan's doing with the EOS platform, as far as new dApps will be, I believe, airdropping their tokens to the EOS token holders. Maybe not all of them, okay? Maybe some of them will still want to do some sort of an ICO because they have a brilliant concept. But again, if Dan's got, at this point, well over $1 billion, probably closer to $2 billion raised through his ICO of EOS on Ethereum, not allowing United States and Chinese to invest in it, which is two of the largest markets in the crypto world, then hey, that's pretty brilliant. That's how things are going to go. Then people are going to want those EOS tokens, and they're going to want to hang on to them. And when you think about what just happened with Ned Scott and Dan Larimer, how Dan's response to Ned was, look, I developed decentralized apps. If that gets you ticked off, then so be it. You're not decentralized because you own too much Steem, per se. And he's basically saying, you know, if that's how things go over at Steem, then there will be another Steem pop up. And that's pretty much how decentralized works. You know, people are going to choose the platform that best suits their needs. And if Steem is becoming centralized with all the whales, and it's not, if people are, I don't really know what the issues are between Dan and Ned. I would assume it's because Ned has a huge stake in Steem, and Dan's out there producing a competitor. That's what I would essentially assume is their riff. So anyway, I wanted to give you guys the heads up. Two big things with Ned Scott and Dan Larimer being number one, kind of their riff, and Dan's stating that he will no longer be involved with Steem, period, which is, I think, probably going to be fairly eye-opening for a lot of people who kind of believe he's back there behind the scenes at any given time to help if they need it. That is not the case. In fact, the opposite is true, where Dan is literally going to try to build a competing social media platform on EOS. I would only assume, you BitShares fans, because I am a BitShares fan too, that this means possibly that a new decentralized exchange could pop up on EOS. Which, hey, if EOS has no transactions fees, then yeah, I'd say a new BitShares could pop up on EOS and be a huge contender, since BitShares does charge fees. Although minimal, they do charge fees. So the opportunity for EOS is huge. That was the one thing I did the video on, was Ned and Dan, and then the second is holding on to those EOS tokens as more and more dApps begin to announce their involvement and reconfiguring to work with the EOS platform. So I'm going long on EOS here. I think that they've got a lot to offer. Ethereum was a great concept, and they just, I think in my mind, although the value of an Ethereum token is skyrocketed, and I understand that, that's market speculation, but the technology behind Ethereum is struggling. It really is. Read about it. They're trying to come up with all kinds of ways to scale, because one or two dApps has a tendency to slow the whole platform down so much that nothing can get done. And further than that, I think that one huge error that Ethereum made was in creating their Ethereum token to be burned by usage of their platform. It essentially says that if you want to, build a website or build a platform or build an app on the Ethereum platform, you have to have you have to continually buy Ethereum, or buy enough now to last you forever, but there's no guarantee that you could have uptime on Ethereum if you run out of Ethereum. Whereas on an EOS type decentralized platform with no transaction fees, as long as you own a stake in it, you have a certain amount of bandwidth allocated to you for essentially forever. So that, combined with EOS's speed at 50,000 transactions per second, and their ability to produce 2 blocks per second, self-governance, EOS has a lot to offer, guys, a lot to offer. So keep your eyes open, keep your ears peeled back, as some people say, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.